A few years ago, one of my friends was going to church. Let's call him, for purposes of this conversation, Juma. He was going to church in Karen. While he was on his way, he thought of passing by Nakumat Mega. We all know Nakumat Mega, right? We used to have a Nakumat there, but we still call it Nakumat Mega. So he popped in to buy some groceries. And as Juma stood on the queue leading to the cashier, he noticed this gentleman who was standing nearby. He seemed uneasy and disturbed. So he decided to strike a conversation with this stranger. And they got to chat, struck a conversation, a good conversation. And this gentleman, after just getting familiar with each other, he volunteered some very shocking information. He said he was planning to commit suicide that day. And this conversation was sort of like an interruption to his thought process. All along, that is what was in his mind. So my friend was in shock. And upon further interrogation, this gentleman admitted that he had recently suffered from a major financial loss and could no longer be able to afford to sustain his kids in the same schools that he was going to. He was broken, he was ashamed, and could not see himself facing his children to tell them, you know what, I can no longer afford to sustain you in your choice of school. We were having a chit-chat conversation there, and I got to hear the kind of fees you guys are paying here. I have 5 children, so I quickly did my math. And I think I know where I would be belonging, in the sinking ship. Eh? Unless I get some serious discounts. But this gentleman, if it was not for my friend that day, just being led by the Spirit to speak to him, he would have committed suicide that day. I know it may sound strange to many of us, but until some of these things happen to us, we can never really appreciate the burden and the stress of such a setback. So, it's something that has stayed very much at the back of my mind, especially with what I do. And I know, because I'm speaking to men here, it can be extremely lonely sometimes to be a man. Very, very lonely. Statistics show that 75% of all suicides are committed by men. 84 men commit suicide every week. Globally, it's a global statistic. I don't know the statistic for Kenya, but I believe it is most likely to be more men than?
I think it's almost
80% of suicides in Kenya are men. So, very close statistic to what we see in the global stage. Yet, what most of us men find is so difficult is to talk, like the way we are having a conversation today. We don't have chamas. We don't have our social groups. Even when we meet during Friday drink-ups, nyama choma, or whatever you may want to call it, we never really have real conversations. It's fun conversation. It is an entertaining conversation. But women do tend to have real conversations. As we were growing up, we were told that men are supposed to be tough. Men are supposed to man up. Men are not supposed to cry. And when you came near that point of passing the rites of passage, you are told what? Take it like a? You take it like a? Like a man. But I think this narrative that has been hammered in us has continued to affect us into our adulthood. We don't know how to open up. Yeah? So, when I think about recent events, like the COVID-19, very, very terrible global experience, even the most seasoned businesses, they either were stumbling or they went belly up. We saw couples and families that earn two incomes in a family lose their jobs at the same time. What do you do in such a situation? How many people here come in a two-income family? Two-income family. It's unimaginable that two incomes can be lost at the same time, right? But this is one event that really showed us it is possible. So have you considered what you would do as a family and where you would be as a family if that happened? These are real questions we as men and captains of our families, we must ponder and consider. How many of you have been to Kitale? Long road, eh? Very, very long road. It's a hectic 14-hour to and fro journey stretched over 581 kilometers, littered with numerous speed traps, with police waiting to pounce on overspeeding and reckless drivers. It's mostly a two-lane road, busy with long-haul trucks carrying cargo, which occasions dangerous overtaking one too many times. Any miscalculated overtaking on that road can be fatal. And I have a personal experience which I want to share with you. A few years ago, I was headed to Kitale for a burial of a close relative. I left my house at about 4 a.m. in the morning. It was still dark, in the wonderful company of my family. Just before the Gilgil weighing bridge, I needed to overtake a slow-moving long-haul truck. I peeped on my right-hand side. I confirmed the road was clear, and I slid to my right-hand side and sped off. To my surprise, and very unpleasant surprise, it was not one truck, there were two trucks. Before I could recover from that, a sudden barrier emerged right in the middle of the road, and I could not come back in. I was on the wrong side of the road, and I was facing oncoming cars. At a distance, I could see a fast oncoming truck flashing its lights, warning me, get out of my way because I'm unstoppable. I was faced with two difficult decisions. To speed ahead and hope that I'll find a space to come back into my rightful lane, or alternatively, to exit on the shoulder of the road, which was very steeply inclined on my right-hand side. I had a split of a second to think. Instinctively, I chose the latter, carefully managing my car to a sudden stop on the shoulder of the road. My family and I were frozen like a deer in the headlights. As the truck passed, annoyingly hooting at me and flashing at me, assuming I was a drunk driver. There was a disturbing silence in the car. You can imagine. As we all appreciated that we had just avoided a fatal accident by a whisker. How is this story relevant to this subject of our conversation today? We are living in lean financial times. And the question of today is, are you thinking or surviving or thriving? And I want to leave you guys with 3 choices that you must make in these very difficult times and in the future. For purposes of just remembering, I like using keywords. One is change, the other one is cut, the other one is cushion. The 3 C's: change, cut, and cushion. The first one, we must change with the times. We must change with the times. My assumptions for safe overtaking had suddenly changed, and I needed to change something quickly to suit my new reality. I understood that difficult choices faced me, and it dawned on me quickly that I desperately needed to seek refuge on the shoulder of the road, lest my family perished if I insisted on overtaking.